Welcome to another deep dive, and this time we're going deep into the world of John Buridan.
Oh, Buridan.
It seems like you're really interested in uh, really wrapping your head around his philosophical concepts.
Yes, he's a fascinating figure.
So we're going to have to go all the way back um, to 14th-century Paris,
Okay.
to the heart of the University of Paris,
Right.
where Buridan lectured and wrote and really just left his mark on logic and language and just thought itself.
Amazing.
So we're going to start with an overview of his life, his career, and then I think we'll unpack some of his fascinating ideas on language, logic, metaphysics,
Okay.
and of course his very unique perspective on natural philosophy. And we'll make sure we really get into the details because, you know, you're a philosopher yourself.
That sounds great. I always find it really helpful to start with the historical and intellectual context when we're exploring a philosopher's work. It helps to kind of ground us.
Absolutely. So just imagine the University of Paris.
Yeah.
Back in the 1300s.
Yeah.
It's just this bustling hub of intellectual activity. And Buridan is right in the thick of it. And he's known as this just brilliant logician. But he chose to stay in the arts faculty, which is really interesting. He focused on philosophy rather than going for a doctorate in theology like many of his peers.
Yeah, that's a really important point. I mean, his decision to remain in the arts faculty, it wasn't just a career choice.
Right.
I think it reflected a deeper philosophical stance.
Yes.
You know, he saw philosophy as its own distinct and valuable discipline. It wasn't just a stepping stone to theology.
Oh, interesting.
And he believed that philosophical inquiry should be grounded in observation and reason and logical analysis, you know, rather than just relying on religious dogma.
Yeah.
It was a bold move. And in a way, it kind of foreshadowed the rise of secular philosophy in later centuries.
It really highlights, I think, his commitment to just rigorous reasoning.
Absolutely.
And his desire to just understand the world, you know,
Yeah.
on its own terms, not just through the lens of religious doctrine.
Right.
And it's clear that he was really invested in, you know, sharing this approach with his students.
Of course, yeah.
I mean, he spent his entire career teaching at the University of Paris.
Right.
And his most famous work, of course, is the Simulated Dialectica.
Right.
It's this massive textbook on logic.
Yes.
And it really became a cornerstone of what's known as the Via Moderna.
Right.
So speaking of the Via Moderna, can you maybe just give us a little background on that? I mean, it was a new style of logic, right?
Yeah.
That was really kind of revolutionizing philosophical discourse.
Yeah, it was a really exciting time for logic.
Oh, wow.
And it emphasized the analysis of language
Okay.
as a tool for understanding reality.
I see.
And Buridan was a master of this approach.
And he didn't just regurgitate existing ideas. He actually took this Via Moderna, like,
Okay.
you know, and ran with it.
He did. He did. He refined its methods and expanded its scope in some really interesting ways.
Wow.
For example, he went beyond just kind of summarizing Aristotle's logical works.
Okay.
He added his own unique insights and criticisms. He wasn't afraid to disagree with the big names.
It sounds like language played a really crucial role in his philosophical system.
Yeah, it was fundamental.
Can you tell us more about why he put such an emphasis on language?
Well, he recognized that language is like the very foundation of philosophical inquiry.
Oh, okay.
You know, for him, understanding how language functions, it was crucial to clear and effective philosophical thinking.
Yeah.
He saw grammar, logic, and philosophy as kind of intertwined.
Oh.
You know, grammar provides the rules for constructing meaningful sentences.
Uh-huh.
Logic helps us structure our arguments and draw valid conclusions.
Right.
And then philosophy uses these tools to explore the kind of fundamental questions about reality, you know, about knowledge, existence, all those big questions.
Yeah. It seems like he was particularly interested in the relationship between language and reality.
Absolutely.
Like, what were his views on how language refers to things in the world? How does language actually hook onto the world?
Well, that's a great question, and it gets to the heart of Buridan's nominalism.
Okay.
He, like William of Ockham, rejected the idea of universal forms existing independently of individual things.
Yeah.
They argued that universal terms like humanity or redness.
Right.
They don't refer to some kind of abstract entity out there in the world.
Okay.
Instead, they're just kind of convenient ways of talking about similarities that we observe between particular things.
So for Buridan, there's no separate abstract humanity existing apart from individual humans.
Exactly.
It's just a concept that we use to group similar beings together.
Exactly. That's a really good way of putting it.
Okay.
And this had profound implications for his metaphysics. He believed that a lot of philosophical problems arose from kind of confusing words for things.
Oh.
You know, philosophers were kind of getting tripped up by their own language, mistaking linguistic categories for real existing entities.
So he's advocating for a more kind of grounded approach to metaphysics.
Exactly.
The less abstract, more kind of...
Yeah. Down to earth. Yeah, I like that.
Okay.
Less speculative.
But if universal terms don't refer to real entities, how do we account for the fact that we can use them meaningfully? How did Buridan explain the process of reference?
Yeah, good question. That's where his ideas on supposition come in.
Supposition.
Yeah. He argued that terms can have different types of supposition depending on the context.
Okay.
For example, the term human can supposit personally,
Okay.
referring to actual individuals like Socrates or Plato,
Right.
or it can supposit simply,
Okay.
referring to the concept of humanness.
Okay. I think I'm starting to see the nuance here.
Yeah.
So he's not saying that universal terms are meaningless,
Right.
just that their meaning depends on how they're being used.
Exactly. And this focus on the context of language, it was one of his key contributions to the Via Moderna.
I see.
He argued that logic isn't about manipulating some perfect kind of idealized language.
Okay.
It's about understanding how we actually use language in real life,
Right.
with all its messiness and ambiguity.
It seems like a very practical approach to logic,
It is.
especially for someone who's, teaching a room full of university students.
Absolutely. And it led him to grapple with some really intriguing problems, like the paradoxes of self-reference.
Oh, yeah, like the classic liar paradox.
Right. This statement is false.
Yeah, exactly. How did Buridan approach these real brain-twisting puzzles?
He loved those.
He did.
While some philosophers, like Occam, tried to dismiss those paradoxes
Okay.
by saying that a term can't refer to itself, Buridan, he argued that these paradoxes actually reveal something important about how language functions.
Interesting.
He believed that they highlighted the importance of distinguishing between different levels of language,
Oh.
between language that talks about the world
Right.
and language that talks about itself.
So for Buridan, paradoxes weren't just, logical curiosities. They were actually opportunities to refine our understanding of language.
Yes, exactly.
And its relationship to truth.
He saw them as puzzles to be solved, not problems to be avoided.
I like that.
And his detailed analyses of these paradoxes, they had a lasting influence on the development of logic and semantics.
This is all so fascinating. We've covered a lot of ground already.
We have.
From Buridan's unique position in the academic world
Yeah.
to his groundbreaking work on language and logic.
Yeah.
But I feel like we've only just scratched the surface.
We have. There's so much more to explore.
There is.
Next, we can delve into Buridan's equally insightful contributions to metaphysics,
Okay.
where his linguistic analysis plays a really crucial role in his understanding of universals,
Okay.
causality,
Right.
and even the nature of God.
Sounds like we're just getting started.
We are.
So buckle up, listeners, because this deep dive into the world of John Buridan is just getting interesting.
Absolutely. Buckle up. Okay, so let's move on to Buridan's metaphysics.
Okay.
This is where his ideas about language and logic really come into play.
Yeah, this is where things can get really abstract.
They can.
But I'm curious. I'm curious to see how his nominalism, his rejection of those independent universal forms,
Right.
how that shapes his metaphysical views.
Yeah, it's fundamental, really.
Yeah.
Buridan argued that many metaphysical debates stem from kind of linguistic confusion.
Okay.
Take the problem of universals. For example, he argued that we shouldn't mistake the concept of humanity
Right.
for some separate, independently existing thing.
Okay.
Instead, it's a term we use,
Okay.
a way of thinking and talking about the similarities between individual humans.
So instead of positing these abstract entities,
Right.
he's grounding metaphysics
Yeah.
in our experience of individual things
Exactly.
and the way we use language to describe them.
Yeah. Yeah, it's a very down-to-earth approach to metaphysics,
Okay.
one that emphasizes observation and careful linguistic analysis.
So it sounds like he's trying to clear away some of the fog, I guess, surrounding metaphysical debates to make things more clear and precise.
That was certainly his goal.
Okay.
He wanted to avoid unnecessary complexities and just kind of get to the heart of the matter.
Yeah.
And this approach is also evident in his views on causality. He was critical of the idea of efficient causality as some kind of mysterious power
Okay.
that makes things happen.
So he's questioning this traditional notion of cause and effect.
He is.
That's a bold move.
It was.
Yeah.
He argued that when we talk about one thing causing another, we're really just describing a regular succession of events that we've observed,
Okay.
right? We see that fire regularly follows striking a match.
Right.
So we say the striking of the match caused the fire,
Right.
but there's no need to posit some kind of unseen force connecting the two.
Yeah, it's almost like he's saying, let's stick to what we can actually observe and describe.
Exactly.
Let's not invent unnecessary entities or powers.
Yeah, that's a great way to put it.
Okay.
And this emphasis on observation and empirical evidence is also reflected in his approach to natural philosophy,
Right.
where he made some groundbreaking contributions.
Yeah, I've heard about his theory of impetus. That sounds like a prime example of his empirical mindset.
It is.
Tell me, how did he come to challenge the prevailing Aristotelian view of motion?
Well, Aristotle's explanation of projectile motion involved this idea of antiperistasis,
Okay.
where the air displaced by a moving object rushes in behind it
Okay.
to kind of push it forward.
It seems a bit convoluted, doesn't it?
Buridan thought so too.
Okay.
He argued that if that were true, you should be able to keep a projectile moving indefinitely just by creating a current of air behind it.
Right.
But that's not what we observe.
So observation contradicted the accepted theory.
Exactly.
Classic scientific method.
Yeah.
So what was his alternative?
He proposed the theory of impetus,
Okay.
which stated that when you throw an object, you impart a certain amount of impetus to it.
Okay.
And this impetus is what keeps the object moving.
Okay.
It's gradually diminished by air resistance and gravity until the object eventually comes to rest.
So the impetus is like a stored energy
Yeah.
that's gradually used up.
Exactly.
It makes a lot more intuitive sense than air swirling around.
It does. It does.
Yeah.
And what's truly remarkable is that Buridan even suggested that in a hypothetical scenario without any resistance, the impetus could continue indefinitely,
Oh wow.
leading to perpetual motion.
It sounds like he's anticipating some key concepts in classical mechanics like inertia.
He is.
Was he completely breaking from Aristotle though?
Not entirely.
Okay.
He still operated within the framework of Aristotelian physics in many ways.
Okay.
For instance, he believed in a finite universe and the idea of natural places for objects,
Okay.
but he wasn't afraid to challenge and refine those ideas based on observation and reason.
So he was a reformer, not a revolutionary,
Yeah,
taking the best of what came before and improving upon it.
exactly.
That seems to be a theme in his work.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
And this approach is evident in his views on the soul as well.
Okay. Now this should be interesting.
Yeah.
The soul is a notoriously tricky concept.
It is.
How did Buridan apply his empirical lens to something so seemingly intangible?
Well, he acknowledged that we can't directly observe the soul itself.
Right.
But we can observe its effects on the body,
Okay.
its actions, its movements.
Okay.
So he focused on studying the soul through through its manifestations in the physical world.
So rather than getting bogged down in abstract speculation,
Right.
he's grounding his understanding of the soul in observable evidence.
Exactly.
Okay.
And this led to a more functionalist view of the soul.
Okay.
He focused on its role in animating and directing the body, rather than on its inherent metaphysical properties.
It's like he's saying, let's focus on what the soul does, how it functions, rather than getting lost in debates about its essence.
Precisely.
Yeah.
And this shift in perspective had a significant influence on later thinkers who further developed a more scientific and empirical approach to psychology.
It seems like Buridan's commitment to observation and logical analysis is a recurring theme
It is.
across all his work,
Yeah.
from language and logic to metaphysics and natural philosophy.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
And it's this commitment that makes his work so fascinating. Even centuries later,
Yeah.
he was a true pioneer
Yeah.
in bridging the gap between traditional philosophical inquiry
Right.
and the emerging scientific worldview.
It makes me wonder how he might have approached some of the scientific and technological advancements that we see today.
Yeah, I think he would have been fascinated by fields like artificial intelligence,
Right.
which grapple with questions of language, logic, and even the nature of intelligence itself.
Right. Right. But before we get ahead of ourselves, we still need to explore Buridan's views on ethics.
We do.
He had some interesting things to say about the will and moral decision making, didn't he?
He did indeed.
Yeah.
And his ethical views are just as nuanced and thought-provoking as his work in other areas.
Yep.
So let's delve into that fascinating world of Buridan's ethics next.
Okay, so let's dive into Buridan's ethical theories.
Right.
From what I've read, he seems to have a really unique perspective
He does.
on the will and moral choice, and how we figure out what's right and wrong.
Yeah, and he really delved deep into this complex relationship between the intellect and the will,
Right.
which was like a central debate in medieval philosophy.
Wait.
Thinkers were really grappling with this question of whether reason should always govern our choices.
Or if the will had its own independent power to act.
So it's kind of like the classic head versus heart dilemma,
Yeah.
but in a more philosophical context.
Absolutely.
Where did Buridan stand on this?
Well, he sought a kind of a middle ground,
Okay.
recognizing the importance of both intellect and will in moral decision-making.
Okay.
He agreed with thinkers like Thomas Aquinas that true happiness ultimately lies in intellectual perfection,
Okay.
particularly in comprehending God.
Okay.
However, he didn't dismiss the will's power as a self-determining force.
So knowledge and understanding are crucial for a fulfilling life.
Yes.
But the will still has its role to play.
Absolutely.
So how did he reconcile these two seemingly opposing forces?
Well, Buridan argued that even when the intellect presents a clear judgment about the best course of action,
Right.
the will can choose to delay.
To send it back for further consideration.
Okay.
He emphasized that our judgments about right and wrong
Yeah.
are rarely absolutely certain.
Right.
You know, there's almost always room for doubt.
Yeah.
And that doubt provides space for the will to exercise its freedom.
So he's acknowledging the inherent uncertainty in ethical dilemmas.
Yes, exactly. It's not always a clear-cut case of knowing the right thing and simply doing it.
Right, right. But doesn't this lead to a potential for paralysis
It could.
and inability to act when faced with difficult choices?
Well, that's a key question,
Yeah.
and it brings us to the famous or perhaps infamous Buridan's ass.
Oh,
You've likely heard of the donkey starving to death between two equally appealing piles of hay,
yeah.
unable to choose.
Right. It's often used to illustrate the problem of indecision.
It is.
Is this a fair representation of Buridan's philosophy?
Well, while the specific donkey scenario doesn't appear in his writings,
Okay.
it It does highlight a crucial aspect of his thinking,
Okay.
the will's ability to suspend judgment
Right.
and consider all options.
Right.
Some scholars believe that the Buridan's ass example was actually a criticism of his ideas,
Yeah.
a way to kind of mock this notion of freedom as inaction.
Oh, okay.
But Buridan argued that this freedom to pause,
Right.
to deliberate, is essential for genuine moral choice.
Okay.
We don't just blindly follow our desires
Right.
or even our reasoned judgments.
Right.
We have the capacity to reflect,
Right.
to weigh different factors,
Yeah.
and to ultimately choose our path.
So he's elevating the role of deliberation in ethical decision making.
Yes.
It's not just about knowing the right answer.
No.
It's about wrestling with uncertainty, considering different perspectives,
Absolutely.
and ultimately taking responsibility for our choices.
Exactly. And this emphasis on the will's freedom combined with his commitment to reason and observation
Right.
makes Buridan's ethical theory surprisingly relevant today.
Wow.
I mean, we live in a world that's saturated with information and choices,
Right.
where ethical dilemmas are increasingly complex.
Yeah.
And Buridan's ideas encourage us to be cautious,
Yep.
to think critically,
Right.
and to resist the temptation to act impulsively,
Right.
or to just simply follow the crowd.
So it sounds like he's advocating for a more thoughtful,
Yes.
deliberative approach to ethics.
Yes.
One that acknowledges the complexities of our world and the importance of individual responsibility.
Yes.
Well, this has been an incredible deep dive into the life and thought of John Buridan.
It has.
It's amazing to see how a philosopher writing over 700 years ago
Yeah.
can still speak to us
I know.
so powerfully today.
Mhm.
His insights into language, logic,
Yeah.
metaphysics, natural philosophy,
It's amazing.
and even ethics continue to challenge and inspire us.
Absolutely. He was truly a remarkable thinker.
Yeah.
A bridge between the medieval and the modern,
Right.
whose ideas continue to resonate in our contemporary world.
So to all our listeners out there, let's raise a metaphorical glass to John Buridan,
Yes.
the philosopher's philosopher,
Cheers to Buridan.
and to the enduring power of philosophical inquiry.
Absolutely.
May his insights continue to guide us as we grapple with the complexities of our own time.
And may we all embrace that spirit of critical thinking, intellectual curiosity,
Yes.
and the unwavering pursuit of truth that Buridan embodied so brilliantly.